morning, you're presenting an excerpt from the novel Bells on Their Toes by Frank and Ernestine Gilbert. Mother had known President and Mrs. Hoover for a good many years, socially since they were fellow Californians, and professionally since Mr. Hoover was an engineer. On one of Mother's visits to Washington, the President urged her to bring all of us to a formal afternoon reception at the White House.
I'd like to meet all the Gilbert children,
the President said cordially. Mother was great with invitation, but she knew we didn't like appearing en masse at anything. Besides, she had visions of railroad tickets and new outfits for everyone.
They'd all love to come, but I'm sure they'd strain the seams even of the White House.
Nonsense. We'd love to have them.
Mother thought a compromise was in order.
Suppose I just bring the 6 boys.
The boys will be fine. Why don't you telephone them right now? Come on. I won't take no for an answer.
A phone was thrust into Mother's hands, and she put a call from Montclair. Frank, who was home from the University of Michigan on a holiday, answered the ring.
I have great news,
Mother said, while the Hoovers beamed.
The President has been kind enough to invite all you boys to a reception at the White House.
She put her hand over the mouthpiece and turned to the Hoovers.
I can just see their faces, can't you?
Oh, for crying out loud, see if you can't get us out of it, Mother.
I can't. I tried, but I can't. I can't believe it's true either.
I don't want to bring all those kids down there. Besides, I've got a date for almost every night of my vacation.
You'll have to break it, dear. You'd have to break the news gently so the other boys won't take the roof off the house when they hear the glad tidings. The Hoovers are right here. Just think of that.
Oh, goodbye. I'm sorry. We're trapped then, eh?
Unfortunately. Dear, I have business in Washington and won't be able to return to Montclair to help with the preparations. Everyone needs to wear their best suits. If you take an early morning train to Newark, you'll get to Washington about lunchtime. I will be waiting at the hotel.
Bill, who is now a senior in high school and currently in charge of the checking account, withdrew enough cash from the bank to cover the cost of 3 full and 3 half tickets to Washington and return, but was having second thoughts about the costs.
It seems like a lot of money. What do you think, Frank? How about we make the trip by car?
Well, it would be cheaper. Once we arrive in Washington and explain to Mother about the savings, I'm sure she would approve of it too.
The 2 oldest boys and Martha were the possessors of a Model T touring car. The vehicle was an antique when they had acquired it the year before for $20, and it had aged perceptibly under its new ownership. The car had neither top nor fenders. The body was painted airplane silver, a 6-inch red stripe, none too expertly applied, ran waterline fashion around the hull at a point equidistant from the running boards to the top of the fenders.
Starting the motor was a 2-man proposition, with one person turning the crank and jiggling a wire loop which protruded from the front of the radiator, and the other sitting in the driver's seat to retard the spark as soon as the engine coughed.
There was no doubt in anyone's mind that the car could make the trip to the capital. As a matter of insurance, though, a pump, tire patches, spare spark coils, and miscellaneous tools were stowed under the seats.
The day before departure, Frank held a dress rehearsal to make sure the delegation had the proper clothes. All the boys, with the exception of Frank, owned blue serge suits. Frank had handed down his blue serge to Bill that autumn, and had replaced it with a collegiate number purchased at the campus toggery shop in Ann Arbor.
The suit had padded shoulders, wasp waist, 23-inch cuffs on the trousers, and a double-breasted vest with lapels. The color was something between tan and yellow, without many of the best features of either, and the material was as heavy and hairy as an army blanket. It had cost $28, and Frank was immensely pleased with it.
From the consistency of the cloth, it was apparent that the suit would wear forever. It was this aspect that appealed least to the other boys when Frank appeared at dress rehearsal.
Good heavens, what's that? I hope you didn't throw away the sales slip. Take it off quick before you muss it up.
What's the matter with it?
If it's going to be a party like Halloween, can I wear my cowboy suit?
Bill felt the material.
It's your own business, what you buy, when you're getting something thin that you can wear out yourself. But when you pick out a heavy suit like that, you're supposed to have me with you.
For something as heavy as that, he's supposed to take all of us with him. That one will go all the way down the line to Bob.
What's the matter with you kids' taste? How far behind the times is this town anyway? Color's the latest thing in Michigan.
It looks like what happens to the mustard jar when you forget to screw the top back on.
It does not, and you keep out of this. It just happens I've had a lot of compliments on it at Michigan.
You mean you've worn it before? Then you can't take it back?
I wore it all fall.
How come I didn't see it in your closet after you unpacked?
Because I know you, that's why. Every time I get a new suit, the first thing I know you're borrowing it and spilling things on it.
If you spilled mustard, you wouldn't have to worry once it dried.
And sheds, too.
Phil said accusingly, picking nap off the sleeve of his blue serge Claire brushed up against Frank.
You're going to leave yellow hairs all over Mr. Hoover.
I don't intend to be brushing up against anybody. It sheds a little, I'll admit. That's because it's still comparatively new.
Don't think I'm going to walk through the reception line with you. I'm not going to watch cabinet officers and the diplomatic corps tiptoeing through great piles of nape that you've deposited all the way from the south portico to the blue room.
You think all the nape will be gone by the time it's handed down to me?
I doubt it. I promise you one thing. I'll never get rid of any of it.
There were 2 flat tires between Montclair and Philadelphia, but the boys patched them and the car ran well. Frank tried to make up some of the time they lost in fixing their tires, but shortly before they reached Baltimore, a motorcycle patrolman came behind them and waved him down for speeding.
I congratulate you for bringing that heap all the way down from New Jersey.
He said, copying the license number into his ticket book.
If I didn't see with my own eyes, I never believed you could get 60 miles an hour out of it.
We can do 70 on the hills. Frank and Bill did something to make the engine run faster.
Shut up.
Bill whispered, leaning forward and beating Bob with his knuckles.
Do you want to get us set up with the river?
70, eh?
Said the policeman, making a note of it. He looked at the patched, treadless tires and shook his head.
What are you trying to do, buddy? Kill all those kids?
At that point, Frank thought killing them was a pretty sensible suggestion. But he shook his head, gulped, and wondered how Mother would explain to the Hoovers that her sons couldn't attend the reception on account of being sent up the river.
Where do you think you're going, anyway?
The policeman asked, thrusting his face up near Frank's.
We're going to Washington, officer.
And what are you going to Washington for?
Frank thought that one over and concluded that if he knew what was good for him, he'd better have a more convincing explanation than the truth.
Why, nothing in particular. Just a sightsee, I guess.
Is that right?
All right, we're going to see President Hoover.
I love wise guys, particularly in suits like that one. I suppose the president invited you personal to drop in and have a cup of tea with him at the White House. Sure he did.
Frank nodded sheepishly.
That's right, honest.
He said desperately,
We've had some flat tires and we're late.
You, is that right? Are you going to see the president?
Not just the president, but Mrs. Hoover and some judges from the Supreme Court, too.
the patrolman surveyed the car, the airplane paint job, the red water line. He looked at us individually. Frank, Bill, and Fred, greasy from changing tires. Dan, pale and about to be carsick. Jack and Bob, wrinkled and dirty.
Guess you're telling the truth. The president doesn't get many laughs, and I ain't gonna be responsible for his missing this one. Go ahead, but no more than 45 miles an hour.
It had turned cloudy in Baltimore, and between Baltimore and Washington, it started to rain. The boys were wet through by the time Frank pulled up to Mother's hotel.
Mother was sitting in her chair, reading and knitting, when the boys entered her room. She had already changed clothes and was ready for the reception.
Oh my!
It's my fault, Mother. I thought it would be cheaper and easier to drive.
I don't mean that. Come here, Dan. You're as pale as a sheet. You don't feel at all well, do you, dear?
Dan explained that he had been carsick, but that he felt all right now that he was on firm land again.
You had me worried for a while. You mean you drove all the way from Montclair in that gray thing? Won't Mr. Lindbergh be jealous?
Frank said that he was sorry that, because they were wet, they wouldn't be able to go to the reception. But Mother said they had to go, and she thought they could dry them out on time.
Everyone will look fine once they're dry. Except, what's the matter with your suit, Frank? Did the rain fade it?
That's the way it looks all the time. There's nothing the matter with it.
It's the latest thing.
Mother said she was sure it was. She stroked her bed and gave each of the boys a sheet or blanket. They went into the bathroom, took off their clothes, and sat around bedwear While they waited, the turns to get baths. Mother called the desk.
Can I have an iron and ironing board sent up too? And I need some shoes taken down to the boiler room to dry. Oh, yes.
And, as an apparent afterthought,
And send up a newspaper too, if you will.
After the board had been sent up, Mother started pressing the boys' underwear, socks, shirts, and suits until they were dry. She saved Frank's suit until the last. When she had finished with his coat and vest and was in the middle of his pants, she stopped long enough to phone the desk in and asked if the shoes be returned. A musty odor of burned dye and scorched room permeated the room.
Hey, my pants!
Mother put down the phone quickly and ran to the board.
Now look what I've done. I've burned a hole right through your beautiful trousers.
Hot dog! Ruined!
Oh, I'll never be able to match them.
there's no argument there.
I don't know how I could be so stupid. We still have 15 minutes, though. We'll pick up a new suit for you. I'll take along a needle and thread and hem the cuffs, so they'll do for the time being.
Do you think we can find one with that heavy kind of material?
I hope we can. Say, it's lucky I had them send up a newspaper. Look through it and see if anyone's having a sale.
Wait a minute. That business of Oregon newspaper, are you sure that was just luck? You didn't burn those pants on purpose, did you?
For goodness sake, do you think I like to buy you boys new clothes? Do you think I'm naturally destructive?
With Frank self-consciously holding down his coat to hide a wedge-shaped hole in his trousers, Mother and the boys walked to a department store that had heavy material, not unlike its old one, except that it was conservatively cut and dark blue instead of yellow tan. Even Bill admitted it was handsome.
To the White House, please.
Mother said. She looked as cool and unruffled as she had when the boys first arrived at the hotel. The boys were on their special good behavior as they waited to go through the receiving line. The President and Mrs. Hoover were cordial and hospitable. Mrs. Hoover looked the boys over and said,
They look just as if they stepped out of a bandbox. I never thought young boys could look that pressed.
She turned to Frank.
You're the oldest, aren't you?
Yes, madam, I am.
Then guess you're the one who looked after everybody on the trip down. I guess you're the one I really ought to compliment.
Thank you, madam.
Mother had planned to return home by train that afternoon. Although she had always before avoided the Model T, she allowed herself to be talked into making the return trip by car.
The skies had cleared and the weather was mild. Frank held the Ford at a dignified 45, and there was no tire trouble. They stopped at Baltimore for supper, and when they emerged from the restaurant, the stars were out and it was still and peaceful.
Why, this isn't bad at all. I ought to let you boys drive me on all my trips.
They started to sing some of the songs Mother had taught them when they were younger. Half an hour out of Baltimore, a siren sounded and a motorcycle policeman pulled up alongside.
He hollered over the roar of the two exhausts, asking how tea at the White House went.
Fine.
Frank shouted back. Then the policeman asked how was the kid who was sick.
He's fine.
Frank assured him. The policeman waved and gunned his motorcycle up the highway.
Good gracious, I don't know how you boys do it.
What do you mean, Mother?
The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court bows to you. The President and his wife hold up a receiving line to chat with you, and you make friends with policemen all the way from Montclair to Washington. I'm certainly lucky to have such fine sons.
We have the good grace to think there is a slight possibility that we might be